afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us here today for this very exciting Seattle Promise press conference. Today we have speakers Dwane Chappelle from the Seattle Department of Education and Early Learning. We have Mayor Jenny Durkan, Chancellor Pan from Seattle Colleges, Abdi Yusuf joining us as a Seattle Promise Scholar, and Denise Juneau, Superintendent of Seattle Public Schools. Without further ado, I will hand it over to Dwane Chappelle, who will kick us off.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Anthony said, I'm Dwane Chappelle, Director of Seattle's Department of Education and Early Learning. I'm here today with leaders from Seattle colleges and Seattle schools, and with Mayor Durkan to talk about Seattle Promise and some of the accomplishments we see in our fall 2020 enrollment data. Seattle Promise reflects the collective commitment of our city to eliminate opportunity gaps and to help make the dream of higher education a reality for all Seattle students. Funded by the Families Education Preschool and Promise Levy, which was passed by voters in 2018, the Seattle Promise is part of the city's larger vision to invest in equitable educational opportunities from preschool to post-secondary and to prepare our young scholars for a better economic future and greater success in life. Our collective commitment to support students is reflected by our partners here with me today, from Mayor Durkan, whose leadership helped pass the historic FEP levy that funds the program, to Superintendent Denise Juneau, whose partnership has been critical in expanding the Seattle Promise to all high schools in Seattle School District, and especially to Chancellor Pan, whose team at the Seattle Colleges administrates the program. They directly support students and is responsible for much of the success that we will be talking about today. And with us, as you see, we also have Abdi Yusuf, a brilliant Promise scholar who will share a little bit about his experience entering the program and enrolling in class this fall. So now I'd like to turn it over to Mayor Durkan for her remarks.
Thank you so much, Dwane. And I have to say thank you for everything that you and Deal have done for Seattle students, particularly in this really challenging year that we've had. And under your leadership, we have made some of the most significant investments in our youth ever, from pre-K, K through 12, and College Promise. So thanks for your work. And if anyone's been with Dwane when he's walking back to some of the schools where he's worked, like Rainier Beach, it's like walking in with Elvis. So I just want to thank him for all his work. And I also have to say to everybody watching this, we haven't had much good news in 2020, and this is just pure good news. And it affirms that the city of Seattle continues to do and invest in the things that matter. I'm really proud of the Seattle Promise program. This fall, we've enrolled the highest number of students ever. Through the program, there will be nearly 850 Seattle students who have access to free college, comprehensive student supports, and other financial assistance as necessary. And in the midst of this pandemic, which has upended our education system, the Seattle Promise has allowed students to continue their education and make sure that COVID-19 doesn't hold them back by giving them a path to real opportunity and good paying jobs. Our economy is changing so rapidly and has changed so rapidly over the last decades. More and more people have been left behind. And the pandemic and economic crisis has accelerated this for so many people, so many families, and so many businesses in Seattle. At every point in time, before the pandemic and repeatedly through the pandemic, adults with a college degree were substantially less likely to be unemployed than adults with less education. These days, the majority of jobs in Seattle require some post-secondary education. We have to prepare our young people for the jobs that don't even exist yet today. And if we want true economic recovery and we want it to be equitable, we have to ensure that our students are prepared for a college degree, certificate, and a pathway to jobs. including some just remarkable apprenticeship programs available. One of the most important things cities can do is to expand access to post-secondary education. For too long, tuition costs have kept college out of the reach of so many families. And during this economic crisis, it's been harder than ever. Seattle Promise makes it easier by providing 2 years free college to every Seattle public school student who graduates, as well as ORCA cards and equity scholarships to offset some of those other costs that we know can be a barrier to education. At the city, our central contribution is through the Family Education and Preschool and Promise Levy, which Seattle voters overwhelmingly approved in 2018, showing our commitment to equity and to our youth and to the future. Through this levy, we're able to fund the vast majority of Seattle Promise and empower our partners at the colleges and the Seattle Public Schools to expand on their work to close the opportunity gap and to help more young people access higher education. New data shows that our efforts are working. 846 students are enrolled in Promise this fall. That's a record for this program. And just to give people a sense of how much it is making a difference, when I came in as mayor, there were 150 students in what was then just the 13th year program at 3 different high schools. So this is a game changer for students in the city of Seattle. We've extended the program to every public high school, and we project that we thought there'd be over 700 students, but we have more than that. We also know that we're breaking down barriers to secondary education that have historically impacted students of color and families that are the farthest away from educational justice. 62% of this fall's class are students of color. More than 1/3 of them are the first in their family to go to college. And 23% of them are getting the benefits of an equity scholarship, which we funded to cover those other additional costs. I too want to thank Chancellor Pan and all the presidents of the colleges who have been just phenomenal partners in this program and who are so committed to our youth and to the future of this city and to educational justice. And I want to give a special thank you to Superintendent Juneau and her whole team in their partnership, not just through this hard year and the hard work it took to get this many of our scholars here, but for all the deep work she's been doing in equity in the district, including bringing back the Technology Access Foundation to the city of Seattle, which is a phenomenal program and I think is going to give students of color such an advantage in tech. We have the colleges and the Seattle Public Schools to thank for their incredible strides as making Seattle Promise a part of who they were. This is one of the best collaborations across government that I've seen in the history of the city of Seattle, where the city working together with the school district, working together with the colleges, and working with our public-private partnerships to provide jobs and internships, I think truly is an example of what we can do when we all come together and center our efforts on the youth of our city. The continued success of this is really, it's a bright spot in 2020. I know it couldn't happen without the work of so many teams behind the people you're seeing here at this press conference, but we have to keep pushing this barrier because education is going to be one of the key things we can do to build equity and justice in our city. And with that, I want to turn over to my good friend and great partner, Chancellor Pan.
Thank you, Mayor. You're absolutely right. When we work together, we can move mountains. Since actually before the vote in November 2018, you have been real champion. So thank you for your bold vision and championship. On behalf of the student scholars, our faculty, staff, and board of trustees, we also want to thank the support of Seattle City Council, Seattle voters who generously passed this PreK levy. This significant vote, as you said, Mayor said, is a game changer. Our partnership with Seattle Public Schools and government enables us to open the doors much broader to historically underserved population students in our city. our district is truly very proud to partner with you, the city, with Dwane, the staff that Dwane Chappelle leads, and the city government. Together, we are truly working to close this opportunity gap. We as a district is also very proud to welcome the largest class of Seattle Promise students that's working together. As Mayor said, about 850 Seattle youths are on their way to earning a degree with 2 years tuition-free funding, individual equity scholarships to help them succeed. As you said, almost 700 are first year, about 150 are second year students. That's truly a very impressive number. And more importantly, 2/3 of the first generation and the students of color make up 64% of the enrolled students. This class is the first time that represents graduates from all 17 Seattle public high schools. Last winter, about 1/4 of Seattle public school graduates applied. They took advantage of the Seattle Promise Scholarship this fall. Now, as a Seattle Promise student body, they are more diverse than the Seattle public high school student they came from, which is truly, truly very impressive milestone. What's happening today, we see the students' families are seeing the beauty of this program. They're seeing Seattle Promise as the real pathway to their college education, to start a dream, to start a successful career. Obviously, we will continue to build upon the support of the city, our partnership with Seattle Public Schools, with the city, and the generous resident to do even more for Promise students. This program is featured not just about instruction, it's about wrap around the services. It's about ensure very small student to advisor ratio. So you'll hear a lot more in the coming weeks. Another effort we are trying to launch that will sustain this program beyond the levy. And we are looking at a campaign called Equity Cannot Wait. It's just the beginning for our Promise scholars. The future is very bright as they study and draw on the individual support, the wraparound service built into the program. We are certain we'll be right along their side to make sure they reach their goals. So in a little bit, you'll hear from a student, Abdi Yusuf. He's a first-year Seattle Promise student, a 2020 Seattle Public School graduate, actually from Roosevelt High School. He and his family arrived in the United States as refugees in 2016. And now, after he got his foot settled in finding the support he needed in high school, he's pursuing his associate degree, dreaming of a future where he can help others like himself. So before I turn it to Abdi, let me just, for the audience who are, if you are students, your family, to say application for next year Seattle Promise for fall 2021 is actually open now. We already have 600 some applicants for next year. But we encourage all public school students to apply by February 2021. The scholarship program is available to all Seattle Public High School graduates, regardless of their GPA, their income, ability, or country of origin. We are holding virtual application workshops, and there are people who will be there to offer one-on-one application support. So simply log on to seattlecolleges.edu/promise. It's the real most smart click you will do. Let me invite our student, our very brilliant Abdi Yusuf, to talk about his experience as a Promise scholar. Abdi?
Hello, my name is Abdurrahman Yusuf. I go by Abdi, like everybody calls me. I was born in South Africa, Cape Town, lived there for 14 years and a half. And I came to the US with my family due to some issues we had over there around 2016, March 23rd. And I first started pursuing my school at Lee High School in Texas, San Antonio. And it was a kind of pretty big jump because in South Africa, I was a third grade and I came to the US overnight. I'm just suddenly at eighth grade. And it was some tough years in school, trying to get used to my environment, being in a whole new country, took me a while. But I moved to Seattle, started my first high school in Renton High School, and I attended there for my freshman and sophomore year. Started my junior year, but I finished my junior year and my senior year in Roosevelt High School. And thanks to Francisco and Edward, I don't know if you guys have him on your Seattle Promise instructors, but because of those two, I'm here today and I am working with Seattle Promise instructors today. So
Thank you very much, Abdi. Congratulations on your success. We will now hand it over to Superintendent Denise Juneau.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Abdi. That is a super inspiring story, and just proud that you are part of our Seattle Public Schools family and graduates. And so congratulations on all your successes. And I know that all of us probably, we cannot wait to see what you do next. I also just want to first congratulate and honor all of the students who have chosen to take advantage of Seattle Promise. Again, we are proud that you are a part of Seattle Public Schools family, and we're proud of the bright future that all of you are leaning into. I also want to thank Mayor Durkan and Chancellor Pan. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your partnership on Seattle Promise, and as you mentioned, Mayor, on so many other things that just continue to make a positive difference for our city. Perhaps most importantly, though, as Chancellor Pan mentioned, we have to thank the residents of Seattle because they're the ones who voted to approve the Family Education Preschool and Promise, or FEP levy, in 2018. And it is that commitment to education that does make Seattle such a great community. We've been able to build so many great partnerships the last 2.5 years, and before that, people really want Seattle Public Schools to be successful, and it's efforts like this and the coming together that makes this happen that just continues to prove that over and over again. I do urge all of our Seattle Public School students to take advantage of Seattle Promise. It's important to note that, there's a lot of national conversation and people and experts across the country talking about opening doors to higher education and to offering a tuition-free start to that higher education. And it's super important to note that that's actually happening here in Seattle. And that's exciting. And it is happening because of strong partnerships and our collaborative and entrepreneurial spirit. And Seattle just is showing that it can be done, and that people should look to this program and the efforts that are being made and the successes that it's showing. And it's a model for the country, really. And I know that there are so many of our graduating seniors who are excelling and they're ready to take that next step. In fact, over the last 4 years, our high school graduation rate has improved by more than 8% for students of color, for this from Educational Justice. Our high school graduation rates improved by about 7.5% for African-American male students and about 6% for all students. And so we are on a great trajectory here in Seattle Public Schools, and these are really terrific numbers. It reflects the diligent, intentional work that is happening at Seattle Public Schools. And Seattle Promise is just a terrific program that our graduates can jump into to continue their success. I'm just super proud of all of these efforts, and I'm just going to toss it back over to Anthony for Q&A. So thanks everybody for being here.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Juneau, and thank you to all of our speakers here today. Just as a reminder to our press, if you would like to ask a question at this point, please raise your hand to ensure that you are going to get called on. We have a few people already in the queue. And when you are asking your question, please do let us know who you would like to ask the question to, as we have a number of speakers here joining us today. So our first question will come from Omari Salisbury from Converge Media, followed by Ashley Gross, KNKX. Omari, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Anthony. Do we get follow-ups today, or is it just one question?
You will get a follow-up, yes.
Okay, great, fantastic. First of all, I want to congratulate these 850 students. There's good news for everybody here in the city of Seattle. First question is for Superintendent Juneau. You just mentioned a 7% increase in graduation rate with African-American males. What is the Seattle schools, and particularly your office, doing to continue to see a rise in the category of Black students in Seattle public schools to get that graduation rate continuing in a higher direction?
Thanks for that question. Yeah, there's been a lot of intentional work that's been going on. We have a very bold strategic plan called Seattle Excellence that is laser focused on providing supports for students of color furthest from educational justice, being intentional about our supports for African-American males in our system. And just, we have focuses on third grade reading. And so building the pipeline early on, but also, one of our priorities within our strategic plan is to graduate college and career ready. And we've been working a lot actually with DEAL on all kinds of projects and programs. We're expanding Kingmakers Program across the city. We actually have the opportunity for Black teens, males to jump into a Kingmakers program that is sort of a culturally responsive program that empowers and teaches a truthful history about the country. And it's pretty phenomenal. We are also at Seattle Public Schools putting in supports around mentorships and mentoring, particularly at 9th grade, so that we are making sure that students are staying on track for the credits that they need to have in their pocket when they walk out of their freshman year. And then just making sure, we're going to start a Black Studies class, a course across the district, working on ethnic studies and forwarding that. And so there's just a lot of intentional efforts that are happening. And again, just the idea that we have the Office of African American Male Achievement that was created this past year. And they are working with a lot of our young kings in the system, a student leadership council, and we are bringing them in to sit on a lot of our task forces and leadership groups so that we continue to center their voices in all of our decision making. But there's just a long list of efforts that Seattle Public Schools is doing to keep African American boys and teens at the center of everything that we're doing.
Great, thank you, ma'am. Follow-up question for Mayor Durkan. Mayor, you said that 62% of the students in this program are students of color. A third of those or more here, it looks like it's the first person in their family to go to school. I wanted to ask you, Mayor Durkan, students of color, that's a broad range, color. Of course, there's lots of colors out there. Speaking specifically to the Black community, African American, do you know, in general, what's the uptake? How is the Black community here in Seattle taking advantage of this program at the highest possible rate that they could? And if not, what are some of the things that the city could do and with DEAL and some other people to get the word out or encourage more Black students and get more Black students into this pipeline and taking advantage of it?
So, Mari, that is a great question, and I don't have those exact numbers before me. We've seen the uptake in our African-American students increase every year, and we've tried to do really intentional working at the school level and with the parents and grandparents in community, and letting people know far in advance that they're going to have this opportunity and get them ready for what they have to do. One of the best things about this program that has been really, unfortunately, impacted by COVID too, is this isn't just get the kids ready, they graduate, go. We actually have the wraparound services starting in school. So we are really focused on getting those school counselor types to identify how do we help our kids of color, particularly African Americans and African American males. I'll let Dwane also fill you in on some of the programs that we were able to enhance this year because we saw in our BEST program and other programs like that, we still have a huge opportunity gap and drop-off rate of graduation for Black students, particularly Black males. And we know the discipline rates are too high. And so we are working with the school district to really focus on that. Dwane, if maybe you could talk about some of the numbers and what we're seeing in our additional investments in both our BEST program, Kingmakers, and what we're doing on the Promise level to get more Black students involved, that might be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And I just want to say I am excited to see these numbers increase this year because we have, just for the Seattle Promise in this cohort, we have 18% of African Americans who are enrolled in the program right now. And I'm gonna speak I'm gonna take it a little bit a step lower. I can tell you that at each high school we have success coordinators working with the schools and the counselors to make sure that we're targeting the recruitment, making sure that those students who are furthest from educational justice have opportunities to participate in this. And this is something that I really wanted to highlight, because when I was the principal at Rainier Beach High School, having someone walk in your classroom and say, you know what, tell you about a program, and then actually working with you during lunch or even after school to make sure that you're completing the necessary steps is a huge key in making sure that our young African-American males and females are successful in the program. But I also want to say that in going to the Kingmakers Program, so, you know, we actually piloted the Kingmakers Program a few years ago at 4 schools, I believe, 3 middle schools and a high school. And it's been a huge success, as Superintendent Juneau just mentioned. And now we're looking at sometime coming up, trying to be real strategic and making sure that we expand the opportunities to a few more schools. You know that, and I'm not going to take up all the airtime here, but you also know that just thinking about the work that comes out of DIL, everything is equity driven. And so we're just super excited right now and committed to making sure that we're serving our young students of color right now in the Seattle Promise program.
Thank you, Director Chappelle. I want to briefly pause.
Anthony, I just want to add one thing. Even though this is we're talking about the Promise here, the other great part about 2 parts about the levy is we reconfigured how we do more in K through 12 to support our students of color and particularly our Black students. But we also almost doubled the amount of pre-K, because you can't just start with these students when they're in 9th grade or 10th grade. You've got to go down the line and you've got to have kids showing up to get ready. And the other part of this is we've seen now that in our preschool that of the about 1,200 slots that are filled this year, 77% of them are young children of color, 3 and 4-year-olds. And so having those kids show up to kindergarten ready to learn is going to help us make sure kids can get through, and then giving supports to families throughout the process.
I want to add one more thing too, is this sort of, we are also, from the very beginning, we've heard from students over and over again that they want to see somebody who looks like them and has their lived experience in front of them in the classroom at some point in their educational career. And so we are also doing a lot of recruiting and looking at retention strategies for Black teachers and Black central administrators and school leaders, and have actually really blown through the goals that we set for ourselves this year as far as increasing diversity of staff across the spectrum. And so also being very intentional on our grow your own kind of programs for our educators, our partnerships with the UW and the Alliance for Education around our our teacher residency. And so just being intentional as far as making sure that we are recruiting the very best as well, and that the very best includes people of color and Black males in particular.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Juneau. Our next question will come from Ashley Gross, KNKX, and we don't currently have anyone else in the queue after that. So again, if you would like to ask a question, please don't forget to raise your hand. Ashley Gross, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure exactly who is best to answer this question. Maybe Dwane Chappelle. I'm wondering if the additional uptake of the Promise program, if you think that that might be attributable to more families trying to economize due to the pandemic and not seeing as much value in sending their young people off to a 4-year college that might be more expensive. Do you have any insight into that? And then secondly, for Chancellor Pan, I'm wondering if you could tell me more about the equity scholarships. What's the average scholarship amount and what is it used for? Thanks.
Yes, thank you for your question. And I just want to reconfirm that my excitement that we saw an uptick in students participating in the program this year. And I can tell you that the applications were due in February. And what we're really super excited about is that we're committed to making sure that our students are going to be successful. We're committed to making sure that we're focused on equity with our students that are coming into the program. And as I mentioned earlier, we're already seeing progress in the equity outcomes that our FEP is focused on for the students who are participating, which is more students of color and more first-generation students accessing higher education. So we're super excited about that. And I'll pause right there just to make sure Chancellor Pan has an opportunity to speak.
The funding from the levy ensured we have recruiters out there who really works very closely with the staff and the counselors in the schools to make sure the word gets out. And when students apply, where they have financial aid, have trouble with getting financial aid process, we have people to really help these students. Those, I think, help with the increase in size. In terms of the equity scholarship, this is one of the features that is very unique for Seattle Promise program. You don't see that across Promise program across the country. Students whose family income meet a criteria are eligible for $500 school-related equity scholarships up to 3/4. So that's about $1,500 in addition to their financial aid, and tuition gets paid. Once they get into Seattle colleges, they're also eligible for other scholarships. You know, the CARES funding, our foundation, our VP, Vice Chancellor for Foundation is also here with us today. They're also raising funds. So there are many different ways. We do not want finance or lack of funds become an obstacle for our student to complete a college degree.
And Anthony, if it's possible, can I just circle back and just say one more thing, is that really it's always been about access and making sure that we're providing access and making it possible for each and every student to attend a post-secondary institution, and really about promoting a college-going culture. And as I mentioned before, just making sure that we're starting this discussion as early as possible at the end of the day, so we can make sure that our young folks that graduate from high school have multiple venues from when they to choose from as they start pursuing their career.
Ashley, did you have a follow-up?
Well, I guess I'm wondering, does anybody know whether you're seeing additional students opt for the Promise program because we're in such a unique time, you know, with like expensive colleges are virtual. So is that having any effect on more students opting to stay here and stay local with the Promise program?
Yeah, Anthony, maybe I can take a stab at that. I asked that same question. And I think it's a really good question. Right now, we don't think so. But I think we're going to have to do more work with the students who are the incoming students to talk to them about that to really find out. But we know, for example, that the applications were due in February before COVID hit. And so the people who are already applying to the program had selected that. We also know from the demographics, particularly having such a high ratio of student of colors is consistent with what we had before, and the high number of people who had not gone to college before. So we you know, there's going to be some portion of that. But I think it reflects really the hard work of the students themselves, the teachers in the Seattle Public Schools, the parents and guardians who've been working with these kids, getting them ready, getting them to graduate, helping them fill out those applications, not just the application for this college, but they have to complete the financial aid form. And so all of that took a lot of work that had to be done by February. So I think there's probably going to be some percentage that did opt for this. But I think that it really reflects hard work to let more people know this was available and to show that it was an option that worked. Because I will tell you, the number one selling point that I have seen for Promise is the students who are in Promise, who have gone through Promise, come back and talk to the kids, because they can talk about how it worked for them, what was hard, but also what opportunities it gave them.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to all of our speakers here today. Seeing no further raised hands, I believe that this is the end of our press conference. Mayor, would you like to say any closing words?
I would just like to close again by saying, we don't have that much good news in 2020, and this is just pure good news. But it's good news that is a result of a lot of hard work by all the people I just mentioned, the teachers, the students, the parents, the guardians, the grandparents, on the city staffs, the college's staff, the Seattle Public Schools. But it's also a real tribute to the people of Seattle, because they voted by an overwhelming number to expand this program, both for pre-K and for free college for the first time in the city's history. And they did it because we're a city that believes in opportunity and equity, and we know how important educational justice is to get people to those jobs that can be good family wage jobs. And we've seen that even more through the pandemic. So moving forward, as Seattle comes out of COVID, this program and programs like it are one of those things that are going to be fundamental to our ability to build a better and more equitable recovery. And I just want to thank again all the people on this call and all the teams behind them. And I want to thank the students, and Abdi, congratulations. Can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you, Mayor. That concludes today's press conference.